Welcome everyone to Planoly Presents. I'll let a couple more people come in. You are all on Planoly Presents, Meet Generation Ingenuity. Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us. This is the Planoly Presents Meet Generation Ingenuity, and this is our last of 5 weeks of Planoly Presents. We've been loving all this time to get to spend with y'all, and if you've been watching them since the beginning, let us know in the comments and where you're from. We'd love to know where all of you are from. If you're from Austin or California or Utah or anywhere in the world, Spain, I know we had people from Australia last time as well, and Africa, so please let us know where you're joining us from. We love to know where everyone's from. And just a reminder that we are giving away a free month of Planoly with the code Planoly Presents at checkout. So if you haven't tried Planoly before or are new to us, we are a social media planning tool to help you have more time for the things that you love and not completely be online all the time. So we hope you can join us. And I will be introducing Eryn Danielle, who is our Senior Manager of Channels and Content here at Planoly, and she will be moderating our amazing panelists today. So go ahead, Eryn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. And just so everyone knows, that was Marlene's bird, also a part of our conversation today. He's the best. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to let people that, just continue to roll in and feel free to ask anything in the Q&A as this goes on, just anytime in the conversation. So we'll, have a discussion for about 30 minutes, and then we'll do 10 to 15 minutes of the Q&A towards the end. So hi, everyone. I'm Eryn, as Marlene said. Thank you all for tuning in and spending a piece of your Friday with us. So just saw someone from the UK, so I guess it's your evening, and I'm really honored that you're spending your Friday evening with us. I don't know if I would with me. So I'll be honest, I've been looking forward to this conversation with Jordan and Eryn. Their respective work and mission have been a part of my own life at different points. As someone whose career changed out of accounting and finance into content marketing, I know the importance of having a network who can support you and coach you and, to take the right steps. Just makes me wonder, Jordan, where Medley was in my life 4 years ago. And so, of course, now I'm in the digital marketing space, and as an industry, we're reckoning with the fact of needing more accountability online and amplifying Black and Brown stories meaningfully. So I oversee content at Planoly, and building strong communities who engage with one another with integrity, empathy, and compassion is a conversation we have frequently. So both of you have built really timely solutions and are doing important work during what I think is a major growth period for our collective society. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Great to see everyone and excited to be here.
So before we get started, I'd love for both of you to just introduce yourself and your business and the community you've built.
Okay.
Eryn, go ahead.
Eryn, you can go ahead.
Okay. My name is Eryn Danielle. I am a dancer, model, and founder of Allies Doing Work. So very much so a multifaceted creative. Sorry about that. Some noise in the background. I started Allies due to my course of study in school. So when I was at Columbia, I studied human rights and race studies, and I was able, and dance. So I was able to kind of make my own major, make my own course of study, even though it was a little bit unconventional, and I was very much so on my own at that time, as far as, being charted with, kind of figuring it out. So that is work that I've always wanted to bring back to the forefront. It took me a little bit to find a space where people could have conversations around human rights and race studies that weren't necessarily in law or policy and those types of fields, because I still very much so wanted to be tapped into my creative skill set, which if you choose to go into law and policy, you know, those have to take the back burner. So it took me about 2 years post-grad to get to this point, but I'm very happy kind of with the way that everything has come to light. And yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's incredible. Yeah. You reminded me of how young you were just earlier today. I'm very impressed. Jordan?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jordan Taylor, currently based in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up actually in the New York City suburbs, and for me, have always been deeply, deeply passionate about teams and group experiences. So sports were a big outlet for me, dance, arts. I engaged in any extracurricular activity I possibly could. And in college, I was fortunate enough to be a varsity athlete as well. And then when I entered the real world about 10 years ago, it was very clear that people really have to create their own support systems for themselves. And it's, you know, a lifelong challenge to continue to learn and to grow. And so I actually worked in consulting for a couple of years, worked in media, then I went to Harvard Business School. And over the past 2 years, I've been building Medley, which is a platform for personal and professional growth that is really all focused on harnessing the power of diverse perspectives. So a big part of the experience is a group, and you get matched to a group of 8 that meets every month over the course of the year. And it's really about providing spaces for people to grow and learn from one another, and get outside of their bubble and encounter new points of view. And we have people from all around the world, actually 9 countries and 20 plus states across the US. We launched in July. So I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you, Eryn and Tareen, and look forward to an engaging conversation.
Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, so I definitely want to point out that both Medley and Allies launched digital first this past summer. And so again, extremely timely, relevant solutions for the period we're in as not just, you know, the society, but as a global, you know, community, both digital and in real life. Just so much to unpack there, but I'll start with you, Eryn. You have a ton of experience working with so many different established communities on Instagram, and most recently with Allies Doing Work in June. And so I'd love to know how you built it on Instagram, and you know, what do you think helped it grow the way it did? Because you had astronomical growth right off the bat. So I'd love to hear about how that happened and some of your learnings.
In full transparency, I created Allies really as a safe haven for me and for my friends. So I saw that conversations around around race and being an ally were being, I believe, improperly framed as something only that white people could engage in. But knowing me and my background and the friends that I grew up around, not only did I grow up around lots of white people, but I also grew up around other people of color and people from different countries. And the experience regarding racism and anti-Blackness is not just something that white and Black people have to talk about and have to engage in. I felt that we could go a bit further. I felt that we could talk about things outside of that realm. And knowing that I learned so much from my race studies classes, from my human rights classes, learning in the ways that all of these struggles are different, but very much so linked and coming from the same place, I felt was important. And I just wanted to take the 4 years of schooling and experiences and classes, and all the things that I learned, and hopefully channel them into this space where we can talk about colorism in not only with Black people, but people all over this world, and how that changes country by country and culture by culture, and just have a bit more like nuanced conversations, and that conversations around race don't necessarily have to be filtered through a white-centric gaze or point of view. Not saying that white people can't learn from these conversations, but it can't only be about that. It can't only be about their experience. And that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to spend my time doing. I wanted to take what I learned from my friendships, having friends of varying backgrounds, and the real conversations that we still have to have even as people of color, and give that, you know, a space. So that was my goal. That was really just a void that I saw. And I said, okay, this is how I studied. This is how I live my life. This is, the area that I live in. It's many cultures. So I feel that, hopefully I can help have these conversations, help bring people, to this platform to have these conversations, and help them feel seen, but also make it very clear that these issues with race are happening everywhere, and that they need to be handled like kind of case by case, and giving people the tools and the language and the terminology to help them learn about that. So I honestly think that with social media, and my experience in working with startups and fast growing brands, and being in the wellness and beauty space for a bit, what I learned is that when you have a really clear story to tell, it does pick up. It does pick up traction. And it took me some time to find my story. That was always a goal, is that I wanted to grow a platform on social, but I didn't yet know what that platform would be. I thought it would be dance. I thought it would be art. I thought it would be my like personal, but it really ended up being this topic that I have been studying and been passionate about for many years. So I feel that when you do have a really clear, concrete story, that helps with that traction, that helps bring people in, who, see you and see your story. So that is, I think, what I learned. And also, it felt very natural and seamless for the first time. In my experience with building social, it felt like a struggle. It didn't feel natural. I felt like, the growth was a lot slower and a lot more, it took a lot more out of me to make happen. But with Allies, it kind of just fell into place because I, had been prepping all of these years, even though I, could not have seen that 2020 would be this way, but I was prepared and ready to have these conversations. So I think it was a little bit of preparation, working outside of my field, seeing what works in other fields, and knowing social from that standpoint. And then also coming into my story and, being ready to say these things that I needed to say. So I think it was a mix of practice and time, and then, just the right story to tell at the right time.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, it wasn't just that Instagram happened to be a great medium for you to tell your story, but you had been cultivating that story for a while. Mm-hmm. And it's just very real and authentic to you. And because it didn't feel like you were pushing it, you were being authentic to yourself. And so when you're keeping it real and vulnerable, it isn't hard to attract the right audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, I definitely started on Instagram. Just that is the app that, I feel most drawn to. I'm not on other platforms. And I don't really see myself getting on other platforms, which I know is slightly contrary to some people's like strategies with social, but mm-hmm. I don't think that more is always better.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, actually. So Jordan, do you have a similar story? Because you planned on launching in real life first, I think. And so
absolutely
things pivoted. And so I'd love to hear about, what have you learned about the unique challenge of launching digital first with Medley? What are the benefits, the pros and cons, like just your story here?
Yeah. So we were originally planning on launching Medley in person in a space that we had in Soho in New York City. We were targeting sort of a late April launch. All the pieces were starting to come together from a design point of view. We had everything planned out. And then on March 13th, obviously that became completely impossible. And, when we had been thinking about the business and what we wanted to achieve, we really are trying to create spaces for deep relationships to form and for deep engagement, for people to really show up and be present. And I actually think prior to COVID, there was a less receptiveness to really high quality experiences and events and workshops and things like conversations like this, to be quite honest, via Zoom. I think people just weren't used to it as a format. And so we, had our business plan ready to launch. COVID happens. The first thing we thought was, oh, first, it's just going to be a couple of weeks. We can keep the Obviously, it was not going to be a couple of weeks. We realized that that wasn't the case. And our first thing was really just to learn, to understand how people would engage in a group experience online, how our message would resonate across channels that we had, just started to think through testing out. And we hosted a bunch of free group coaching conversations led by the coaches we've been working with, but ultimately realized that the ability for technology to bring people together around the world. I mean, even in this conversation, I think I saw Australia, I see Italy. It's absolutely incredible that the power of different perspectives is even greater when there are people coming from different geographies. And so we had to completely redesign our strategy for launch and for growing our community given the new environment. But what we tried to do, very much in line with Eryn, was really nail down and build on our story and recognize that and just focus on, building this business. My co-founder is also my mother. She comes from a very different background. She worked in finance for 30 years. And really just focusing on, okay, here's our story. Like, hopefully it resonates with people, and let's tell it in different ways and see what channels and what platforms are working. And so, I consider us as a business still really be in the learning phase of figuring out, where our niche is going to be and how we're going to grow, continue to share our story. But interestingly for us, we had, my mother, Edith, has a lot of followers on LinkedIn. She had like 50,000 followers, and now she has like 80,000 LinkedIn followers. And so that was a platform that we unexpectedly ended up leaning into simply because we had a little bit more of a starting point. But I think something that's very clear is, you have to be yourself, and you have to also just try things out and sort of see what happens.
That's so interesting, because I'm sure that was not even on your radar, but when you say it out loud, it makes perfect sense that your audience for Medley would be on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific example of something Edith has tried on LinkedIn or even on Instagram as Medley that resonated the most with your audience?
Conversations, honestly, have been the biggest opportunity for us. Edith has been doing a lot of LinkedIn Lives, and I think actually we're going to start experimenting more with Instagram Lives as well, because we haven't really tried that as much yet. But we have found that people are really excited by the way that they can easily put in questions. They start chatting with one another when they actually watch LinkedIn Live. And because it's a feature that I think it's not fully rolled out yet across the platform, LinkedIn is like favoring on the algorithm,
right,
giving people the notifications, which is pretty cool. And so I think that our big takeaway though on that front is just that people are really excited about getting a glimpse of sort of the humanity and the depth that we all have, and moments of vulnerability, moments of actual emotion are what really is resonating the most with people who are interested in learning more about us.
Yeah. That's surprising yet not surprising at the same time. Eryn, do you have a moment in mind where like there was, something you said or posted that really just took off with your audience?
Yeah, so I think I can pull up my Instagram a bit right now, just so I'm quoting it correctly. But we had a few posts that kind of took off, which brought both, good and bad, comments and feelings. One was a dear friend of mine who helped outline the difference between being non-racist, racist, progressive, and anti-racist. And it was an incredibly nuanced, graphic that a lot of people didn't get. And that a lot of people had a lot of feelings towards, and it really, I think it got 41,000 likes, but then also like tons of comments and shares and personal DMs where people, were really upset or had lots of thoughts and feelings about her work that I, had to suddenly figure out, do I need to speak on behalf of someone else's work? What is my role in this? How do me and the author kind of handle this in a way that is, like honest to her work and making sure I'm not misquoting her or speaking for her, but also making sure we don't have to explain ourselves to people who aren't even interested in having a true conversation. But it taught me that nuance is a really hard thing to convey over social media. And not that that's something you need to be afraid of or, you know, back down from, but to expect that if it's something a little bit more nuanced, that it might bring in some negative feedback from people, not even that follow you, just people that are looking for posts to, you know, comment on in like an angry manner, which I always find very odd. But that was something that, you know, did kind of take off. At first it did stress me out because I had to figure out, you know, what I was going to do about it, or if I even had to do anything about it, and what safeguards I was going to take to protect myself or protect the platform or protect the people that follow the platform and are interested in having genuine conversation, even if they don't understand everything all the time, because I don't expect everyone to understand everything, especially on Instagram, and take it for face value. But I had to figure out, you know, how can I make people and myself feel safe on this platform. And I think that Instagram and Twitter are particularly ripe with just, you know, really negative comments. I don't know if on LinkedIn it's that same way, but I do feel like with Instagram and Twitter, you do have to establish those clear boundaries. But, you know, it made me realize the topic that I posted, it's an important topic to be had, but it made me rethink, you know, maybe this is something worth expanding on in a live where we have more time to go into these things. But also that I didn't have to feel bad for posting something that some people are going to be upset by, just because, you know, they aren't ready to understand those many layers to race and to, you know, these things that are happening. So that was probably, that was in June. And that's when things kind of, I think, like took off and had that like crux. So
yeah. I mean, and that is the very nature of your work, is to have these hard conversations. And social media is both a beautiful and challenging space to do that in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I guess I'd be interested to know for both of you, being vulnerable and building values driven first communities online is definitely the future with the way Gen Z is headed. But the flip side of what you're saying, Eryn, is it's an energy exchange. And so it requires having a lot of boundaries. I guess I'd love to hear, you know, if you guys had to share one tip with all of our audience today on what, you know, what it means to build a values-driven social good community. What's the one quality that every social media marketer should keep in mind when they're creating content?
I can go ahead, Eryn. So, you know, the first thing that really comes to mind for me when thinking about, okay, what does it take to really build a values-driven community, is to be as explicit as possible about those values. It sounds really simple, but, you know, you sort of will attract what you put out there is going to inform what who is drawn to whatever it is that you're creating. And, you know, I'm very lucky in the sense that Medley at this point is we're growing quickly, but we're, you know, a small community of size. You know, we have a few hundred people who are deeply engaged in the community. And what that's enabled me to do is to have conversations with people and understand what's drawing them in and what pieces of the story are really resonating. And so in terms of really a tactical thing, I think that applies to anybody building a community, which is to take the time to have conversations. You can DM someone and say, hey, like, I really love how you've been commenting on X. Like, would you be open to chatting for 10 minutes about what you like about what we're doing? Because I just think there's so much to be gained that might not come out of the analytics or the various engagement levels. Because you can start to identify, you know, the person who's really engaged and who's really excited about what you're doing, and then think about how you can market and target them.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Like, it used to be all about just clean, simple engagement metrics like likes and comments.
Yeah.
Now it's really about know, like how many back and forth comments are happening, how many conversations are happening between your followers, how many people are DMing you and saving your content. Those metrics are just more human and real now, and more
100%.
important to actually have like a sustained, engaged audience.
Especially since now you can easily share, like reshare static posts to stories. That I think has been a huge game changer in terms of enabling posts to really, you know, go viral on Instagram in a way that couldn't happen, you know, 6 to 8 months ago. So
yeah. I think what I have learned in particular is, I think with social media, you have to decide what role you're going to play in the overall system. So there are certain accounts that operate as like a 24-hour news cycle. And there's a space for those. I don't follow those, but I know that for many people, those types of places are helpful. So when I decided that I was going to start talking about race, I was going to start talking about these things, I made the choice to not be reactive to everything. And that doesn't mean you ignore the world that is going on, and that you know, live in some sort of like, you know, bubble, but you also don't have to be reactive and react to every single potential post, meme, comment, thread that goes on either, because I think it's important to decipher if you would rather post every single day or have a few really meaningful, really thoughtfully fact-checked, which is really important, fact-checking, especially when you're talking about race and this type of thing. If you'd rather engage with your audience in a, like less often, but with a higher quality. So I think there's some accounts, you know, that post every single day, multiple times a day. And there's some that post a few times a week, once a month. And setting up those expectations for your followers too, so they know what to expect from you. If they know, okay, this is an account that does lots of lives, and I can always count on to, you know, tune in to like an actual face-to-face or screen-to-screen conversation. Setting up those expectations and within the parameters of what you can actually be comfortable with and, you know, actually keep up is, I think, what is more important than trying to like keep up with everyone else, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
It doesn't make sense to like do all these things and then peter out and not be able to maintain, like, you know, that pace that you've set for yourself. I think the people that, or the accounts that I think have the most value and meaning, they decide what social media is going to be for them, not what they have to do, I guess, to like pander to these accounts, because that will also just like, I think, drive you mad, and like you get focused on likes and numbers and things instead of making those actual impactful moments in people's lives. So that's kind of what that is the strategy that I have chosen, especially being the only one on the team, that I had to be clear with myself. What can I actually maintain, and where can I actually show up for people week after week, instead of holding myself potentially to a standard that, you know, I might not be able to keep up with. And I think the accounts that do the best set up their expectations well and kind of stick to that.
Yeah. No, it, you know, kind of goes back to knowing your story. And once you have that clear story in mind, it keeps you laser focused on your mission, and you don't pander to trends or things everyone's doing. You know, I think back to when, just to be like, to, you know, in the spirit of transparency, I'll share, you know, a conversation we had at Planoly, which was, okay, like all of these companies are sharing their stats of, you know, their employee breakdown. Like, what does their company makeup look like in terms of gender and race? And everyone's, you know, was posting about it. And we asked ourselves, should we do that? Because we're actually very diverse. We're very proud of, you know, who we represent in our company, and the diversity of thought and all the layers of D&I. And so we were very excited, and we have, you know, incredible stats, but it just didn't feel right to have to prove that, you know, prove our values in that way. There are other ways that we can stick to our mission and showcase our values than just hopping on to something that's happening digitally just in the moment. And so you know, there's going to be lots of moments where if you are managing a social media platform or a business online where it's tempting to want to do what everyone else is doing. But Eryn, you know, to your point, it's like having clear, explicit values makes it easy to stay on track and really give your audience what they signed up for to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want the social media trends and the frenzy to pull you away from your mission. And I had to take a step back with allies too and figure out like, what is my mission, not the current wave of what's popular on you know, these platforms, but figuring out your mission independent of trends and changes of season, I think will help you, you know, stick around for the long haul.
So I am going to, before I go into the last question, I do want to say if anyone in the audience has questions, please use the Q&A chat box at the bottom and I will get to them in a few minutes. But, you know, so before we open up the Q&A, in the spirit of back to social school, we'd love to give our audience some homework because I think both of you have communities that are just very personal growth driven. And so with everything we've talked about today, community is a huge part of that and having that support system. So whether it's personal growth or showing up to be a better ally, I think it takes daily work to do that successfully. So what's something we should all do after walking away from today's session?
I think, you know, if you want to build your own social platform, if it's through you yourself or through like an external company, brand, collective that you want to start, I think if you could create a ecosystem of that, you know, group of people that you want to help, you know, have these conversations. I think figuring out the role in which social plays in that process is important. Is it the end goal? Is it the starting place? It's a little bit different if you're a brand or if social is used as a metric to sell something, because, you know, with social, that is a means to selling a product, a brand, and like, you know, some sort of experience. But if you're trying to build a group of people that are constantly in conversation with each other and can lean on each other, figuring out if so, like where, you know, social media, if it's Twitter, Facebook, you know, whichever platforms you want to be on, figure out their place kind of in that process. Is it something that, you know, you want to be a first impression or something that you want people to always come back to and spend lots of time on? And I think that, you know, plays a big role into the content strategy and into what you're encouraging people to do or to go to or to watch or to view. So that I think is an important process, an important part of, you know, figuring out the best ways that you're going to have these conversations and what roles these tools can play.
Love that. So my piece of homework is very tactical, and it's in line with what I mentioned before around really talking to your community and co-creating with them. So I'd suggest try to challenge yourself over the next week to talk to 5 to 10 members of your community, and community could mean anything. If you're just starting out, it could be people who you think would be excited about what you're putting out there. If you have, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers, that's even easier. You can post something in stories and be like, hey, we want to chat to 10 people, like DM me if you'd be up for it. But I just think that it will illuminate a lot in terms of why people are excited about whatever you're putting out there. And it's not too complicated.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's a blend of what both of you are saying. It's, you know, periodically it's taking the time to get to know your audience. So it's kind of opening up the door and say, like, let's have a conversation. Like what resonates with you? What's working?
Mm-hmm.
What are you here for? What do you like? And really getting to know them, because sometimes I think what's hard with digital communities is that over time they become avatars and @ handles. And so this, you know, conversations like this on Zoom or, you know, having that back and forth via DMs reminds you that we're all interacting with human beings with lives and feelings. And so it's really important to take that time from, you know, every couple months just to check in and see what's really, really going on in the mind of your audience and community. So I love those answers, guys. So looking at some of these questions here, someone's asked, in addition to the communities you're building, what communities inspire you or give you comfort during this time? Jordan, do you want to go first? Okay.
Yeah, happy to. You know, I'm going to take a very old-fashioned response to this, and the biggest source of comfort I've been finding lately has been walking in my neighborhood with a mask, of course. My husband and I recently got a dog, and we've been walking outside with our dog, and it's I think a lot of what community used to be in terms of, oh my gosh, like what kind of dog do you have? You know, just casual talk with strangers. But there's been something about the walks that I've been trying to take in the morning before I spend, you know, the bulk of my day behind a screen and on Zoom that has really been keeping me going. So I look forward to be able to spend time outside and to casual conversations with people and to the people around me in my neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Love that. I forgot about real life communities. What are those?
I know, it's crazy. It's a crazy concept.
Eryn, yeah, what's a community that brings you inspiration?
Honestly, the things that I've been really drawn to lately are just any tactile or any hobby that involves me using like my hands or like myself to engage. So learning new tasks or revisiting old tasks or hobbies from when I was like a child has honestly given me so much comfort and made me value like the very simple things in life. Like being able to get frustrated over a meal not going properly and trying to figure that out, like just those very simple things. Calling friends, not face to face, but even just like a phone call has been really helpful while I do other things, while I'm, you know, trying to figure out something. I'm a big fan of pulling inspiration from fields outside of my work. So I watch like a lot of Chef's Table because I will never be a chef, but I just connect with their stories so much. I always feel very seen, even though we do very different things and have had very different processes. But that's what makes me feel fresh. That's what allows me to show up for like my clients and myself, is when I like take myself outside of my day to day and I look at things that have like nothing to do, like absolutely nothing to do with, you know, what pays my bills or what people kind of expect of me. It just allows me to kind of expand my mind in a little bit of a deeper way. I'm a very deep thinker, and when I do the best work, it's when I give myself like weekly or daily time to just deeply work or deeply think and create and brainstorm without any time pressures or, you know, constraints. So engaging in hobbies that allow those thoughts to just naturally come up is what just keeps me going and keeps me like coming up with new things and new posts and new content and new things that I want to touch on. So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You know, when I'm low on inspiration and I feel like I have a blocker, I actually do also watch Chef's Table because I will never be them, but watching them just be meticulous and mastering like literally 3 dishes, maybe at most, like I am fueled for days. I'm like suddenly so energized to create and make something. So I love the thought of like going somewhere else beyond your own industry and comfort zone to refuel. So someone else asked, what's an under the radar account that you guys recommend following that does a great job of storytelling or connecting you to other communities?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question just one more time?
Yeah. So what's a more like a low key account that you follow either on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, wherever, that does a great job of connecting you to other communities?
Mine is Nowness. I love Nowness is just like my absolute favorite. It's just like, it's very visual. It's very video based, which to me just most things on Instagram are either static posts or they're reels, but just like actual video content that was not even made for Instagram. But they're always doing really interesting, weird, cool things. They just kind of know all the creative people in any line of work, and I always feel like I'm learning something very new, like science and technology that I'm not naturally plugged into, you know, figuring out who those people are and like how they make their work kind of take off. So that's something that I'm always going back to.
I follow a couple people who are, both of them interestingly are in the fitness world, but one of them, I'm looking to see what her handle is. She is a runner who used to be a model, who I think still is a model, and her Instagram is Lucy the Viking. And I don't know why, I've been finding it just very delightful. The way that she'll like video herself like running on the street on the way to the track. And she has a very interesting story in herself in terms of how she got to New York and how she, you know, is a model, but now she's trying to go to the Olympics for the marathon. She's like going to Olympic trials. So something about that I just find very inspirational and very relatable. And I follow a few other people like that, where they strike a balance between, you know, being very open in themselves, but still have a consistent narrative in terms of what they're doing, what they're striving for.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. And then, gosh, there's so many other questions. A lot of folks are interested, I guess, to leave as a last question is, folks are really interested in how both of you had such high growth in your communities early on. And so if you could point to something really specific or tactical that really led to your initial growth on any account on social media, what would that be?
I think for me, it was talking about, I think if you're trying to be particularly on Instagram or in any conversation, you have to look at the ways in which the market or the conversation is oversaturated. Like if everyone's talking about this one thing, you know, that means that we're missing like 99% of the other things that have to be talked about. So identifying the ways in which the market is saturated or the conversation is saturated, and then figuring out language and terminology, copy, visual assets that directly counter that. It's not necessarily that it's not part of the conversation, but it's coming in from an angle at which other people haven't thought about. So I made the choice to talk about race from a non-white centric point of view when everything was about what can white folks do to be less racist, which is a conversation that, you know, we need to have, but we're not talking about a whole lot of other people, you know, that are probably also having questions with race and wondering ways that they can be better, that they can talk to their families. So being able to sit there, decide, you know, what conversations you want to be a part of, like make that choice for yourself, and then figure out the ways in which you're going to have to make yourself stand out, which means either, you know, talking about something from a slightly different vantage point than, you know, most people are.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that, you know, really resonates with me as well. I think additionally, when, you know, I think about what has enabled us to, you know, reach people who are excited about what we're doing, I think it's really been a combination of two things. Like one is when there are specific moments. So if you're launching a product or launching a business or have like an announcement, that's a really good opportunity. It's a huge opportunity because you can also get other people, you know, to engage and support you and reshare. And it's totally, I mean, my friends will text me and be like, hey, I just posted this thing. Did you reshare it? I'm like, of course. I love to support my friends and people I know. And so I think, you know, really making sure you're capitalizing on those opportunities and on those moments is one piece. The other big piece that I think can be really effective is if you're able to identify and create content that really has a purpose and a value in itself. So for example, whether it's like, and you know, Eryn, I think you do an amazing job because you're really informing people, you're really educating people. So when people understand that they can share something, they're sharing that and educating their own communities. And so, you know, in our space, you know, we think about personal growth, we think about, okay, what are tools that people might want to be able to share with their community, or simple exercises or something like that. So I'd really encourage you as well to think about whatever space you're in, how you can create content that also has a function that people will be excited to identify with.
Yeah, I think for both of you, it was sitting down and just really thinking about what made sense to your story, and really staying and sticking to that instead of just adding noise to the echo chamber. So it's almost like having horse blinders on, just to stay true without thinking about how everyone else is posting XYZ or whatever it is. It's taking the time to really answer, why are you on social media and what are you providing to your community? So I love that. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today and giving us your energy and sharing your stories with us. I know I have a lot of gems I'm walking away with. I'm sure the audience does too. So I'd love to invite Marlene and her cute bird back into the mix. Hi, Marlene.
Hi, thank you all so much. This was such a wonderful conversation, and I love to see our chat box blowing up with such. I screenshotted some of these questions I can send to y'all later, so you can do little lives or try to answer them on your platforms. But I want to thank everyone for their time. Most of our attendees stayed on the whole time. And just thank you, Eryn and Jordan and Tareen, for such a wonderful conversation. And thank you, everyone who's been watching Planoly Presents this whole time. We look forward to bringing more content like this for you guys. And thank you for, you know, supporting us always. And again, thank you all. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. It's a lot of fun.
And then one last thing, sorry, before we completely log off, I know I'm horrible. Can you share with our audience where they can find you, what you're up to, anything you'd like them to know?
Yes. I'll put my Instagram handles in the chat.
Same here. But I'm excited to have a few more lives. Really excited to pick those back up again. I feel like that is our most valuable piece of content, because you just can't replicate a conversation. Like, you know, once the conversation is had, it's special between those two people in that moment, you know, with the mindset and the things that they learned then. So I know that people really love those and always have a lot of questions and comments. So I'm excited to do more of those.
Okay, perfect. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, you know, also hearing about the journey of being an entrepreneur and starting a company. I'm planning on sharing a lot more on that front. And so, yeah, hope you can, I did put my personal handle and Medley's Instagram handle in the chat, and would love to have you follow along on our journey.
So for Jordan, it's Edith Jordan, and with Melody, and for Eryn, it's Allies Doing Work and Eryn_Danielle. So make sure to follow them. And thank you all again so much. Have a wonderful weekend. And I hope we get to do this chat again sometime soon.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.